What is Waldorf? What is Waldorf education? Who is Rudolf Steiner? And what is Anthroposophy? I want to talk today about the anthroposophical roots that started and founded Waldorf education. Because in order to understand Waldorf and understand its philosophies, its pedagogy, and the way that the education system is set up and the beauty of the education system, you first have to understand its foundings and its anthroposophical roots. So Waldorf education was founded about 100 years ago by Rudolf Steiner, an Austrian scientist who studied and founded anthroposophy. What is anthroposophy? Anthroposophy is anthropos, which means upright human. It's a Greek word for upright human. And osophy, or sophy, is the study of that. So study of the upright human, meaning the study of humankind. That's what anthroposophy is. If you were to really look at a growing and developing child and really study them and be in tune with them and make conscious choices about them, you are studying that human. You are connecting with that human. And it's not only our children that we try to study and connect with, it's also humans around the world. And anthroposophy is not just about parenting and education, it's really about who are we as humans, who are we becoming, what is our relationship to self, to others, and to the world. When I first discovered Waldorf education, I was a play therapist, and I found a lot of its teachings and pedagogies to be in line with my beliefs as a play therapist. The study of children and the value of play in Waldorf education it really spoke to me, and I realized that in the public education system, they're doing less and less of not only play by decreasing PE and the outdoor, play times that they have, the recess, and here we call it in America, we call it recess, but the outside time is becoming less and less, but also they're decreasing a focus on the humanities. And my sister is a professor of the humanities and an advocate for the humanities. And so in my family, we do a lot of discussion on the value of humanities and the study of the humanities as who we become as people. It starts with the depth of understanding other people, our place in the world, understanding and studying truth, beauty, and goodness. And I found that in Waldorf education, they not only teach about truth and beauty and goodness, but the teachers are taught to model this for the students. And the value of the teacher-child relationship and the parent-child relationship is core, and I found that to be a very beautiful thing. So let's talk about really what anthroposophy is and how that impacted Steiner's development of Waldorf education about 100 years ago. He was definitely a pioneer, well ahead of the times and well ahead of the game. Waldorf education has evolved into a lot of different things. We have Waldorf toys, Waldorf playrooms, Waldorf books, Waldorf stores. But without really understanding what Waldorf is and recognizing that Waldorf is not about what you have or the school that your child attends, but really about who you are as a person and who you are in the world. And it starts with anthroposophy. So Steiner studied humans, right, with anthroposophy. And he started by noticing that when a child stands upright, there is something very unique about the way that they stand and the way that they move. And from his observations of young children, he was able to develop the coursework or the division of education by looking at the lifespan. So bear with me on this. He's divided the human development or child development into seven-year terms. So when a child stands upright, right, for the first time, he noticed that the dome of the child, the head, is similar to the dome of the heavens. The way that the heavens, if you imagine the universe kind of like a dome, we've got daytime and nighttime. The sun comes up and the moon, everything is circular, spheric, right? This is the dome. And then when the child walks, its limbs, as it tries to get its footing into the world, are kind of like a tree or a plant, getting roots and connecting to the world, connecting roots, foundation, bear with me on that, even its footing as it tries to find its firm place in the world, but it kind of leads with its heart as it starts to walk. And with that study, he recognized the connection from the limbs of the plant life and the nature life, the dome of the heavens, and the connection to the spiritual world, right? And then leading with the heart is the emotions, but even the heart, it beats involuntarily, right? There's a rhythm to the heartbeat. There's a rhythm to our breathing, in, out, inhale, exhale. Our digestion, there's also a rhythm to our digestion, the way that our bodies work. We blink and we breathe, and our processes as a human have a rhythm to it, similar to the rhythm of the Earth and the moon and the stars and the rotation and the seasons and the days and the weeks and the hours. And when he really looked at the physical world and the spiritual world, he noticed that there's a connection. There doesn't seem to be an accident. Rudolf Steiner was always somebody who wondered a lot as a kid. He talks about the beauty of idleness and the value of that if we look at something and observe something, our brain starts to, churn, and we start to figure things out and solve problems through observation, exploration, and most importantly, wondering, not being told the answers or given the answers. And he really saw the value of the way that the human develops and the connection to both the physical world and the spiritual world. And I found that to be very beautiful because I think that nature and outdoor play has always spoken to me and always seemed to be of value for the child. But it's not just about health and wellness and, fresh air and sunshine, but it's really about our desire, a very primitive desire and instinct as humans to connect with the physical, natural world. And for a young child, if you put them out in nature, you'll notice that they do wonder, they do explore, they tend to look up, and you can tell that their little minds are churning if there's no ambient noise, but they're just being one with the earth. And, some people call it earthing, but it's really just about being outside and being present and letting the child fill in the blanks and make shapes from the clouds and watch the way that the leaves fall off the tree and listen to the crackle of the leaves as a squirrel scurries up a tree. There's beauty in that when there's no noise, and the child is learning through observation, and they're also being connected with the rhythm of the world. The rhythm of the child is connecting to the rhythm of the world, and this furthers child development, and it deepens their understanding of themselves, their relationship to others. They develop gratitude and awareness of things outside the self, and in some ways it sort of avoids narcissism, right? Which is the thinking that, or the egocentric feeling that I am the world, right? But rather just being connected to the world does a lot for empathy as well. A young child connecting with nature and animals and being outdoors develops gratitude and appreciation for the world. And in a lot of Steiner's work, he talks about spiritual realms, so we'll get there. But he divided human development into 7 epochs, and I could be saying that word wrong. It's EPOCHE, 7 epochs or 7 terms. He calls them 7-year realms, and he talks about the head, heart, hands as sort of the foundation for a lot of the education that they do in Waldorf. So the child in the first 7 years of life is very driven by their hands. They want to do a lot. They want to touch a lot. They want to run, climb, make, build, use their hands. They want to cook, they want to mold, they want to touch everything. Even little babies, they go to touch each other's, they want to touch you. They want to connect with their hands, right? This is the hands realm, very much about doing and feeling and connecting. And also, from an educational standpoint, this builds the hands for doing, right? In the education, the Waldorf education kindergarten, they bake bread a lot. They knead bread, they grind grain, they wash their washcloths and their rags in soap, and they hang them, the clothespins, to dry for the day. And this is purposeful work, and it's working together as a team in the classroom and everything, but it's also about hand building and connection to the world and the foods that you're making, the snacks that you're making. There's value in that, but also from a brain development standpoint, when a child is doing and experiencing things with their hands, there's a firing and rewiring of the neurons in the brain. When they are crossing the midline, they are strengthening the corpus callosum between the right and the left side of the brain. So through sensory experiences, rich sensory experiences where we've got sight, touch, taste, smell, even hearing, and sensing from the nature of the world around us, that intuitive sixth sense that most children have. They're still very in touch with the spiritual world that they have not quite completely left yet. They are developing the brain in a very unique way. An infant is born with more neurons in their brain than there are stars in the galaxy. That's a fact. And we know that by not tuning into those neurons, parts of the brain, those neurons begin to sort of prune away. They kind of fall not die, but they do. They disappear. They're not being utilized. And by really providing rich sensory experiences from 0 to 7, we are building the brain by accessing as many neurons as possible, by exposing children to different rich sensory experiences, different languages, human touch, and really connecting with them in a loving way. There's lots and lots of play in Waldorf early childhood, and open-ended play, which means that the toys and the materials in the classroom are not pre-formed. In fact, they might look very bare or very basic, and what that's meant to do is allow the child to be in charge of how they play with the materials and what they play with the materials, and the child is responsible for sometimes even the colors of the materials and of the toys. You might see a playscape where everything looks very bare, very basic, very wooden, and it might just be a cubicle structure. And then you see the children playing, one child might be playing castle and knights, and the other child is playing post office, and the other child has decided that this is a grocery store, and then one child says, well, this is my home. They are all in their own imagination, and because this play structure is not colored or labeled, it has not been decided what it is until the child decides what it is. And as a former play therapist, that really speaks to me, because that's what we do in the playroom, in the play therapy room. We have lots of things for bridges and tunnels, cars, but they're not pre-formed cars. They don't look like a fire truck or a race car or a police car. They're very open-ended. The child gets to decide what it is, because play for children is not only their natural language and how they express themselves, and it's also how they connect with the world and connect with others. Play is a child's work, and it's very important and very valuable to who they become. You'll see children sometimes play out difficult emotions and experiences and give alternate endings to some of their play. Perhaps it's something that really did happen in real life and they wish they had made a different decision, or perhaps you see them act out their anger towards a playmate or a peer or even a parent in their play, and it's okay to allow that to happen, because they're processing, what would it have felt like if I hit that friend? What would it have felt like if I had chosen to share instead? And you see that happen in their play. So they're processing emotions and experiences, but they're also using their imagination, and they're building brain as well. So play is very valued, and from a 0 to 7 perspective, I really saw the value of that in Waldorf education. Then from ages 7 to 14, they say that the child is no longer in the hands realm, even though there still is a lot of handwork and beadwork and things done with the hands. We're now more in the heart realm from 7 to 14, and the emotions of the children at this age are really the core foundation for a lot of the work and what drives the work. So you'll see in a 4th grade classroom, they start studying Norse mythology, and the teacher might be very theatrical and very flamboyant and very charismatic in the way that she's teaching and telling the story and really coming alive with the fairy tales. And the fairy tales are told, fables, folk tales, mythology, all of this. So we're starting to connect a little bit with the spiritual realm, which is more of the heart and the emotions, connection to others, class plays, really getting in touch with the characters and doing a lot of art. Art and music are core in Waldorf, and it's not really just about developing multiple intelligences, which all children have, and it should be a focus on not just academics, because academics are not where everybody shines, but really incorporating the arts, music, and storytelling, and eurythmy is very specific to Waldorf education. And music, not only are we continuing to activate all the different parts of the brain, developing the multiple intelligences that all humans are capable of, helping children to showcase their talents in new ways, but by interweaving that and looping it in throughout the curriculum, we're also, it feels good, right? We're touching on the heart from 7 to 14. Those kids need to be able to express themselves, express their emotions, and relate to characters in a way. And in mythology and in fairy tales, you'll see good triumph over evil, right? You see the evolution of the characters and the development of the characters, and the children at this age can relate to that, because think about a child at 7 to 14, what are they going through? They're going through a lot of really intense changes. They're starting to explore their sexuality, they're exploring socially, they're very curious about the worlds beyond and spiritual realms. And what I love about Waldorf education is it is open to all belief systems and all religions. And what I love about that is that children should not be told what to believe or how to believe. They should be exposed to all things and form their own opinions. And whatever you do in your home might guide the framework for what they believe. But they are being taught to love and accept all people, which is something that I find very beautiful. They're not being told that just because someone is not like you, doesn't look like you, or dress like you, or act like you, or maybe even believe like you, it doesn't mean that they're a bad person. They're just very different than you, and that person still has value. And I love that because it's very open-minded and allows children to wonder, which again has a lot of value, and form their own opinions on things, which again is about critical thinking. And Waldorf really teaches teachers not to necessarily give the answers, but to provide opportunities for children to think. And Steiner talks in depth in some of his lectures about how teaching concepts is unproductive, because concepts will have changed, and information about what we know will have changed by the time the children are out of school. And by teaching children to think instead of teach them to learn, we are doing our job as educators. We want children to be able to expand on concepts rather than memorize concepts. And I find such beauty in that as well. I mean, think about the things that you knew in school growing up, the 4 food groups that were taught to us, what we know about nutrition, what we know about the world. Even planets have changed. What we call a star or a constellation or a planet, some of that has changed from when we were in school. But if you're being able to think and expand on concepts, then you're a lifelong learner, and your love of learning is enriched when you're given opportunity to form your own opinions on things and find ways that what you're learning in school applies to what you're doing at home and your world as a person. Just like for a young child, when what they're learning about is child-led through play, and they're learning from conversations with the teacher, they're connected to their learning, and they're excited about learning because they're playing, which is so instinctual at those young ages. And then from 7 to 14, when they're doing a lot of more music and art and handwork and eurythmy, and they are still very much in touch with nature, but they're exploring all of those things that touch on the senses and the heart realm. They're more connected to their learning, and it has more value to them. They might even teach geography through fairy tales and through mythology, and it's easier for the children to connect with what they're learning about when they're free to express their learning in creative ways by writing songs or poetry or art with chalk, or even modeling something out of beeswax, or maybe knitting something. They include and incorporate all of those different very Renaissance types of things into the education. And then from 14 to 21, this is not an area that I've dove very deep into because my children are so little, but I do know that this is where Steiner talks about being in the head realm, right? The anthropos, the dome. This is where everything that they've done physically, concretely, and felt is now being applied. Logic is now being applied in 14 to 21, and really expanding on those concepts. And so there's a lot of projects, there's a lot of getting out into the community and really applying what they've learned over the years. And I would be very interested to go into the high school of a Waldorf school. And actually, I want to see the schools all over the world, but I'm very curious about these students, because what I've heard is that the college acceptance rate is very high for children who choose to go to college, but also that they are well equipped to go out into the world. They are very independent, very responsible, very confident. They have a variety of skills, but most importantly, because imagination has been valued throughout their entire education, they are also very innovative, and they are entrepreneurs, and they're very successful because imagination is responsible for innovation. And unfortunately, in the public school systems, we don't allow very much imagination anymore, and we're falling behind in a lot of other places in regards to innovation because, unfortunately, we're teaching children how to memorize concepts and regurgitate information for standardized tests, and we're not developing the multiple intelligences in the way that a Waldorf education does. And I love that Steiner really focused on head, heart, hands, the whole development of a person, the whole development of a child, and really views children and families holistically. In Waldorf education, there's also some schools have rules about screen time, and the value in that is that one, you're decreasing the technology in the home and allowing children to play more actively and encouraging, hopefully, some more time in nature. But also, Steiner talks about if we give children images, then we're preventing them from coming up with the images themselves, which I think is a really beautiful thing. And if you notice, children who watch a lot of TV sometimes will play out things that they've seen in TV rather than play out things that they've created themselves. And again, we want to really focus on imagination and free play. So I would encourage you, if you're considering Waldorf education, or if you do want your children to explore more naturally and have more outdoor play and develop their imaginations more creatively, then I would encourage you to put away the iPad and the game systems and turn off the TV and really focus on free play, exploration, imagination with your young children. Waldorf education is not a simple thing to understand, and anthroposophy certainly is not a simple thing to understand, but I do hope that I've been a little bit more clear. I hope that some of the concepts are more clear to you now as you're considering whether or not to send your child to a Waldorf school. There's great groups and supportive groups, lots of curriculums for Waldorf education at home if it's not affordable to you or if there's not one in your area. But I would also really encourage you to start a Waldorf school if there's not one in your area. There's a lot of support on different websites that promote Waldorf. You can definitely you can get in touch with some Waldorf curriculum writers if you need to, and really explore. I would encourage you to read some of Rudolf Steiner's lectures. There's a lot of really great books out there about understanding Waldorf education and Waldorf kindergartens, but starting a school, a small school, or even a co-op at a local church or community center, even in your home, is a great way to spread the word about Waldorf education. I personally would love for this video to go viral, especially to teachers who work in the public school system as well as Waldorf, because I think that a lot of the philosophies of Waldorf and a lot of the teachings, and especially our understanding of child development, needs to be spread to the public school system, and hopefully we can see some education reform when we understand not only how children operate, but how people operate. And when we understand that brain building and body building is just as important as learning concepts, if not more important than learning concepts, and how we think and feel and develop will is really important to the foundations of educating our young children. I do have a blog. It's called wholeheartcrunchyparenting.com. And I also have a podcast where I explore some of the concepts in more depth, and I offer parenting tips and support. You can find me on Apple Podcast at Whole Heart Crunchy Parenting. Be well.